Hi there. So in this video, we will see software development lifecycle models. So we are going to discuss some of the models such as waterfall model, then spiral model, then iterative model, and then VV model. Okay, so let's start with the introduction to why we need all these models. Okay, so earlier days when software development was new, at that time, programmers used to write the code and then automate the procedure. Now, then system became complex and then making them require some sort of procedures and some sort of cycle that would reduce the time, reduce the amount of money being spent and amount of programmers it required to complete that project. Okay, so these models make sure that you spend the less time, money, and number of people to carry out the project. Okay, so software development lifecycle model will have objectives such as ensure that the high quality program will be created. Then there is strong management control within project and its hierarchy. Also maximize the productivity of the programmers and the people who are testing it. Now we will see some of the earlier models in software development lifecycle. So the first model that was widely used was waterfall model. Now this model was created to tackle some of the basic projects, or you can say projects that require minimum time, minimum amount of coding and minimum number of people to carry out certain projects. And this is one of the oldest and best known model. The reason most of the companies and let's say freelancers make use of this model is because of the cost and time. It requires less cost to carry out certain project than it will be done with this sort of model. Now, there are many ways with which this sort of model is added for your project. First, what this model does is it will gather the requirement of your project, then it will have design for that project ready, how each component will look like and how it will work. Then all these modules will be implemented, then these models will be verified, and then comes the maintenance part, execution, and then delivery of the software. So as you can see, this looks like a waterfall. However, as much as it looks good, when it comes to maintaining the product and iterating through the requirement and some design aspects, this is not the model big projects are going to look for. So that's the time this sort of model requires much modification. So other models such as spiral model, then VV model, and finally other iterative type of models were created. Okay, now we will take a look at spiral model. Now spiral model is similar to incremental model with more focus on risk analysis. So here risk is taken into the context and then software is built around it by carefully planning, evaluating the risk, and then working on that. Okay, so let's take a look at that. And here you see spiral starting from planning, then risk analysis, then development, and then evaluation, and then next cycle starts the same. So as you can see, it goes through all this over and over and then it appears like a spiral. Okay, so here the requirements are gathered in planning phase, then risk for each requirement is carried out, then development begins, and then tested, evaluated, and then committed. So prototype is rather quick to get compared to, let's say, waterfall model. Okay, and as you can see, it is kind of unending process, and this spiral grows because of your requirement and any maintenance that happens. So this is a good model for bigger projects who are going to be in regular maintenance, regular update, and regular change of requirement. A lot of companies still use a spiral model. However, as your project grows complex, you'll find that this model may not address a lot of issues. For example, suddenly during development, you will notice that if any feature planning has design mistake, so you can't go back and correct your planning, and you have to complete that cycle and wait for next development period. So going back and forth within your iteration becomes difficult because this is incremental model, so one build depends on another and then another, and in between some bugs remain. So in such case, spiral model doesn't work properly. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we will discuss one more model that can address this issue much better. Okay, so that's where this VV model, also known as validation verification model, comes in. Okay, as you can see here, this model is called VV model because in first phase it verifies your requirement and then validates your built software. Okay, so let's take a look at verify phase. It says requirement analysis. So on the right hand side you have your acceptance test for your requirement. So this goes in parallel with your planning, design, and implementation phase. So while in requirement phase you will find acceptance for your requirement, then system design will have system testing, then architecture design will have integration testing, then model design will have unit testing, and then implementation again on those corrected iterative builds, and then again unit testing, integration testing, system, and finally acceptance testing. Okay, so basically these are some of the models that you'll come across while you are into software development.